A very good morning. This is about enhancement and brain hacking. The title, My Head Isn't Mine Anymore, doesn't belong to me anymore. And you may think back to the women's lib movement. Some of you may be here. There was the phrase, my belly or my womb belongs to me. Now, just move that up a bit geographically, because today is about what is going to happen to our brains in the future, and that's what I'm going to talk about. I was a bit surprised to end up in the e-health track. I had another impression what that would be, but let's see if I can connect to that somehow. I want to introduce you to Sophia. Sophia, I met in January 2017. She's a product of Hansen Robotics. David Hansen is of the opinion that we have to produce robots that have three important features. Features that are actually human but could be imitated by humans. First, creativity, second, empathy, and third, putting themselves in other people's position. And he produced a robot that you could see in action at the World Economic Forum, a robot with human features, human looks, and that communicates that you could say are surprising and perhaps even irritating at some point. I had the pleasure to speak with Sophia. It was a pleasure indeed, because different to from other interfaces, you really got an answer, and that was what really made me think afterwards. I had the need to stroke this robot's face, because it seemed so human, with such a fine, soft skin, not what we are used to from machines. That instinctively there was this intuitive move that I made. So that's the one direction that we talk about a lot these days, because we're thinking about what's happening to robots that might take our workplaces at some point, our options for creativity too, perhaps. But I think that it's actually about something else, another direction, and that is the whole topic turned around 180 degrees and ask, isn't it us as humans that have to deal with how we could be enhanced, how the implementation of artificial intelligence and the big data analytics and everything that's connected to it in our body, in our brains, could lead for change in ourselves. And that's what I'm going to talk about, and that's what I want to show today. We have already seen that these things happen. We've seen that a lot can be replaced. The merger of human and machine is progressing, and if we have the axiom that in the digital age that nothing done by human hand cannot be done better by or with software, then the motto also goes that nothing done with the human brain cannot be done better by or with software. And that's what we will have to get adjusted to, and what I would like to explain in a few points. Let's have a look in 3 steps to see the dynamic that trigger that dynamic. I'd like to talk about what is possible, what is coming, and what are the consequences. And that will shape our reflections, more or less. So, what is possible? It's possible to have what we do in our brains, our brain activity be followed, be registered. We can also improve them, and we can change them, manipulate them. So let's start by following brain activity. What you see here is a small experiment at the World Economic Forum. This is about a visual scanner. I wear one of those, and that scanner records and reconstructs what I'm looking at in a photo. And what you see in the background is the photo I'm looking at, and you see what I'm focusing. From one point to the other, the focus is is shifting. And through a projection, what I see can be seen on a canvas as well. So that's a small example how we can follow brain activity from the sensoric system, seeing, hearing, smelling, and also, in a further sense, thinking. What happens can be followed. And what happens there can also be improved. That relates to the fact that our brain activity, by being followed, can be measured and compared. And what you see here is an example I've produced myself at a walk through a robotics exhibition. And you see the different activity levels here, the stress level, the engagement level, the level of interest, excitement, focus, and relaxation. Interestingly, the relaxation line was flat in my example. This was explained to me. That sensor simply was broken. I'm pretty sure that that's right. Now that is interesting, exciting. You look at these diagrams and think, wow, I have this small system of electrodes, I wore that on my head, and later I can see on paper or on screen what actually happened. And the more interesting part is that I can also see how do I perform compared to a peer group? What do the others do? What is my position compared to the average? And that leads us to the actually interesting part of this whole topic of neuroenhancement. It's not just about us noticing what happens in our brains, in our heads. It's about improving compared to what others have going on in their heads. And that is where things get exciting, because improvement doesn't come for free. I can't just walk around that exhibition a second time and hope that things have improved. I have to do something to improve. I could then struggle to initiate or initialize my focus, really concentrate hard, or be really emotional about something. But that is just a self-delusion, because the processes that go on in the head cannot be controlled one-to-one, as many of you hopefully know and have experienced, because life would be very, very boring and sad otherwise. So I have to do something to get at the options for change and manipulation. And for that, there are first tools as well, a small self-experiment. Another one I did at with the device of the Think company that's available on the US market, that focuses on activating brain levels and lead them towards the levels of emotion that I would like to have, or the states of mind. You have relaxation and other levels that you can control and record that. That is a bit complicated to explain, but there will be a live stream later where you can see this happening. So you put this device on your head, it's connected to another electrode that is on the back of your head, and you then, via an app, control the power supply with a program. It's either power activity or relaxation. Different programs are available. That was an interesting experience. I had just arrived by plane in Boston, so in connection with jet lag, I can tell you that it's not recommended. You tend to lose a lot of weight because you can't eat or drink for 48 hours, or you can't eat or sleep, I mean. But if you do that in a normal state of mind, with the app you can then experience the promise of Think company and control your state of mind. So states of emotion at the press of a button, states of alertness in the brain. That is what this device will produce. It costs about $300 and is not certified by the US Health Authority.
All right, so we basically have the options to track, to improve and enhance, and to change and to alter everything that happens within our brain. That's a lot. It's very exciting because that's not where it ends. So if we look at what's going to come up next, I'm going to throw you 3 or 4 examples of where this journey will continue, because this is only the beginning. The next hot shit, the new interface, thinking, instead of clicking, swiping, or speaking is going to be the next thing to happen. This is an example, like a self-study I did in Tübingen in the laboratory, where I tried for the first time how I can think something, a text, into a computer. And it works. It doesn't look very sexy yet. If you have that head on your helmet on your head, all these electrodes, that's what's necessary still right now. Successively, they're going to become less. But if you look closely at the image, you can see that I've been starting out to spell out interface, and it works. You think through a visual scheme what words and letters you want to have, and you think them into the computer. The neuronal sensors are different when you think about A or B or C, and that's how this works. It's very slow at the moment still. It's full of mistakes and bugs. If somebody opens the door in the middle of it, the concentration's gone and the writing is not going to be working for the next 15 minutes. You've got to refocus and then it works again. And this is interesting because in a commercialized market, this has been tried and tracked for many, many years already. You might have seen in the Facebook conference that this professionally is trying to be made possible, that you write about 100 words per minute, and that is quite a lot. And so in the future, I can just think of short message in WhatsApps, and I can just think them into the short message into the cell phone, and I can see the message, but then I can think the answer back, and who knows what happens with reading. And you can automatically translate these languages to these messages to a new language. So if you look at this phenomenon, step by step, slowly, we're going to be able to transfer our own thoughts into data by tracking them with electrodes. Next step is that we, from the electrodes, enter the brain with a brain implementation. And this has been done medically, and it has had great, great, great successes and opened up immense possibilities. This is what you see in the background image, is something from the Brown University that they did. What they did for people who are partially immobilized, and they made these patients make a robotic arm think. So basically, by implanting this, they managed to gradually improve their quality of life, because they could use extensive machines to do the actions that they themselves weren't possible to do anymore. And these developments are not going to stay within the medical research area. They're going to move towards the commercial market. And there's a few examples already there for these physical combination of technology and human brain. And this is the first cyborg who implemented an antenna into his brain, into his head. Neil Harbison cannot see colors naturally, but with this antenna, he can hear 365 colors. So he can't see them, but he manages to listen and hear to the different colors that we, as normal human beings, see. And the newest version of this antenna that he has implemented into his head is has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, so now friends can send him images directly into his head. These images he doesn't see, but he hears them. He hears them in different sounds and sound connections. And this is a development that's exemplary for what's possible. You can fight and discuss and debate whether you want to run around having an antenna sticking out of your head, but the possibilities of merging of brain and technology is a journey that goes forward, and with what pace it goes forward. Harbison said that there's one thing about this.
You can never shut off.
There's a life without a new sense that you can never shut off, is a quote by him that he expressed after having the antenna installed. And I mean, this is obviously something that's interesting in connection with its development. So we're going to go one step further. We have the data that we can extract with direct interfaces like implements. So the question is now, can we exchange brain data? And on human beings, for now, we can say, no, that's not possible. On the scale of rats, it has been proven that it is possible that you can exchange the data within a rat's brain. So in Brazil and in the USA, they've tried this. So there's one rat that's in the cage. She's got a light that goes on, and then once the light goes on, she has to push a button, and then she will get some water. So the thirsty rat, based on Pavlov's example of typical, she's obviously going to do that. She's going to push the button this way. She knows that she's going to get water. So when the rat was implemented with into the brain,
they sent the data to Brazil via the internet, and they had the same setup there. But in this case, in the rat's case, there was no light. So the data from the American rat that was received from the American rat made that the other rat, go to the button immediately, and she was able to drink there. So what we can learn from that is, what we can obviously see is that neural networks can have data transfers that work on the other end. That was the first time we've seen that in the example of rats, and of course it's a long path from there to humans, but we can see that that is a stage that is at least imaginable. So we can at least, via electrodes and brain implants and commercially available brain implants today, and via neural networks getting linked, we can link up human brains and imagine what will come from that in the future. And now, of course, it's interesting to ask what will be the consequences. If you look at what we can do and what is coming up, what is in research right now, and progressing at an enormous pace, the concept of humanity and of ourselves will have to be rethought. In Brazil, someone in 1913 wrote a paper, an essay, which is called The Mathematical Human. And the interesting thing is here that this was a positive vision that was mentioned. It was supposed to be an incredible kind of competency. If someone, as a mathematical person, has this logical approach, that was what Musa wrote, that would be fantastic. Now, of course, that wasn't possible in 1913, so from today's perspective, maybe the idea that the evaluation is somewhat different. When he wrote The Mathematical Human, this was the model perhaps for an abstract person that is coming, someone who, the person that uses the brain as a productive power in a world of self-craft, so a world of constant self-improvement, where on the marketplace of brain competition, you'd struggle to be first. That is the scenario thought to the end that we could imagine. It doesn't have to come that way, but thinking helps, doesn't it? Also, it helps for deciding what you want and what you don't want to do. So we might not be on the phone, we might be on telepathy, we might have to try to, with our power of thought, our creativity, we have to try to boost it to be able to compete with others. And that is quite an interesting model. With the productive power of the brain, that is something we haven't quite achieved yet. That would also mean that after the social divide and the we would have to think of the neuro divide as well. If you have enough money, such as $300 to buy the think company's device, then I'm able to adapt to what the challenges in the environment all the time. If I don't have the money, I cannot do that. So the ability to remain and become a productive member of society through my brain's power, which is no longer given but manipulable, depends on the money you have. And that's an interesting point we should discuss. And that's a different perspective from the medical and technological options that we have today. We would discuss the brain just like we would discuss other parts of our identity, factors that determine our identity, such as ethnic background, religious faith, all kinds of other things, sexual orientation, etc. So, regarding brain power, that would become another of those factors, and that would lead us to something like the right of self-determination of one's thinking. Is there the freedom to free yourself of the manipulation of your brain and your thoughts? And what opportunities do I then still have to compete in a marketplace that is very much shaped by these options? So that's a question that we should ask today, because the answers then might help to shape the future in the way we want it. A very important point also is what happens to human identity. What actually am I if my brain can be observed by others, and if perhaps randomly alien information could arrive at my synapses, information that I didn't think of myself? All that in the context of neural developments and the options of implementing data streams from one to the other could be imagined. This is a philosophical thought, but I'm very interested in it, and I would like to trigger it now. If we can imagine that from a constructivist perspective, we can observe ourselves as individuals, well, that cannot work because I have a blind spot there. I'm the observer and the observed at the same time. So my subjectivity is caught in this loop. If you practice that in the context of neuroenhancement, then you have to ask, what am I actually observing? If my brain is just a node in a global neural network where data is exchanged, is it myself that I'm observing or others? Is this myself? Or am I a permanently changing constellation of data streams that partly emanate from myself, my own neural network, but partly from others? From the point of view of identity, this is completely very, very interesting. But if someone would like to ponder that, I haven't got any answers. If someone would like to ponder that, it would be interesting. So what we are experiencing is that we are slowly moving towards a transition into another kind of society, it seems, which I would call Nero Capitalism. Nero Capitalism that, well, everything that's in our capitalism, in other dimension, everything that exists already in terms of competition and marketplace can be transferred to the use of our human brain. And Henning Juckert and Eva Hess have written a very interesting paper on this in 2013, where they wrote that the future of humans lies in a dynamically renewable expansion, and the readiness for that. And that doesn't just apply on fitness training and healthy eating and having better sex, but it's also regarding our brain as the last area of identity will open up, and this competition and these developments will encompass the brain, and that is a change in the perception of humanity, and the conceptualization of humanity is something we cannot quite think yet, but it's an interesting thing to look towards, and that means that it's time now to think about these issues, consider what we should do. And if I come back to that sentence from the first human cyborg,
you can never shut off.
Life with a new sense you can never shut off. If we open our brain in the way I've just described, we have not just one new sense that can never be shut off, but many. And we will then live in an age of strobo minds that are completely under a complete deluge of triggers that are fed into our neural network. That is a quite scary idea, and you can imagine how a society and this kind of life will work. Probably we will quickly develop technologies that will help us to control the technologies we have previously developed, because otherwise human brain and human psyche will not be able to withstand this flood. But before we are on the way to a strobo mind society, we could perhaps just do what we can do with our brains today, which is to think and decide what we want and what we do not want. We have that freedom. Thank you.